Hello again, and welcome once more to Denton's Tales. Now, the Vikings. Ah, yes, the Vikings. The truth. Yes, the truth about the Vikings. Actual historical fact, not the fictions that one so often sees. But the thing is, which is which? Which is the truth and which is the fiction? Well, I suppose you've seen TV shows, Vikings or Vikings Valhalla, for example. You've seen documentaries, read some history books, even visited some museums. So, you know all about the Vikings, right? Oh, yes, you know all about those Vikings. Violent savages with horned helmets, raiding and pillaging 365 days a year, raping every woman who still had a pulse, and, well, maybe some who didn't as well, but it's all failed with that. But anyway, all the while trying to wipe the Christian faith off the map. Yes, well, if that's what you know about the Vikings, everything you thought you knew is pretty much wrong. Yes, but don't be disheartened by that. Oh, no. Join the club. Most people who haven't actually studied the subject in detail would think exactly the same thing. And not just the man or woman in the street, as the saying is. No, incorrect or misleading beliefs are often trotted out by those who should know better. Yes, researchers for documentaries, authors of history books, even museums. Yes, even museums. There's a very good Viking museum here in Dublin, and it still sells little Viking figures and keychain ornaments with the historically incorrect horned helmets. Yes, very keen on accuracy they are. Many of those who are pagans and follow the Old Norse ways are often themselves misled by these abundant falsehoods. Those who say, "I'm a Viking, I live the Viking lifestyle." No, sorry, Ducky, you're not. For reasons I'll come to in detail later on. But briefly, the Viking wasn't a nationality or a religion or even a way of life. There was no Viking lifestyle. It was something that one did. It was an occasional occupation, you might say, and one that you can't do today for quite a number of reasons. The period of history known as the Viking Age has so many misconceptions, half-truths, and inaccuracies associated with it that, well, when it comes to the Old Norse people of Scandinavia, usually referred to in itself quite incorrectly as the Vikings, because they weren't, people's knowledge often wavers considerably from genuine fact into semi-fantasy, in some cases more akin to a comic book than anything to do with genuine history, religion, or indeed mythology. So in this video, I'm looking at some of the misconceptions, the half-truths, and sometimes deliberate distortions of actual history, and not just about the real Vikings, but about the Norse people as a whole and their world. Allegedly historical dramas on television perpetuate many of these misconceptions, inaccurate half-truths, and the woeful Thor movies. Oh my, and their image of the Viking Age. Oh, don't get me going on the Thor movies. They turn the Viking Age into something more akin to Star Trek than to anything from Scandinavia, with Bifrost. Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, resembling a futuristic airport runway with flashing lights on it. Yes, take note, Marvel Comics. Rainbows, they're curved. Yes, they're curved, not flat. And they don't have flashing lights on them either. Yes, now, of course, you could say that that's entertainment. It's entertainment, not a university lecture on history. I'm well aware of that. But, sadly, the Viking Age seems to bring inaccuracy down on itself far more than other periods in the past. While storylines may be far from the truth, in many cases they're not even close to the truth. War movies, for example, they generally have correct uniforms and equipment for whatever the period may be. We don't see a World War II dogfight being fought by Sopwith camels and Fokker triplanes, nor do we see George Washington crossing the Delaware in the motorboat. But once the Vikings and the Norse people generally are involved, well, any semblance of historical accuracy just goes out the window in so many cases, which I find extremely annoying. If you're going to do something, well, why not do it correctly? It's just as easy to be right as it is to be wrong. And this misinformation is not only the produce of the man in the street, as the saying goes, or well, we should probably say the man and woman in the street these days. No, the TV shows, movies, I've seen supposedly well-researched historical documentaries on television or YouTube that, well, sometimes get the facts completely wrong, or they perpetrate a common misconception rather than dispelling it. The same with some books on Norse subjects, and this applies not just to the historical figures or events from the Viking Age, but to mythology and the religious belief as well, reaching all the way up to the home of the gods, to Osgard itself, or Asgard, as it is in English. No, not Valhalla. No, that is not the home of the Norse gods. In fact, it couldn't be. Yes, and the reason that it couldn't be is because it doesn't even exist. There is no such place as Valhalla. Now, there's a very popular misconception to begin with, right there, Valhalla. The name, well, it's repeated in countless TV shows, movies, as well as in documentaries, books, museum displays, in numerous pagan sites, in every possible reference to the gods of Scandinavia. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anywhere in Old Norse belief. No. There is, however, a place called Valhall, which translates as the Hall of the Warriors Slain in Battle, which comes from Val, meaning specifically one who dies in battle with a weapon in their hand, and Hall, meaning a hall, the great hall in Osgard where Odin entertains those who have fallen on the battlefield, the warriors feasting and drinking, fighting, and enjoying women until the end of the world. Ragnarok shall come. But ask just about anyone, where do the Norse gods live? And they'll say, oh yeah, Valhalla, yes, Valhalla, which of course in its true form of Valhall is simply a building. Now, a very important and large building to be sure, but it's still only one of many buildings in the genuine home of the gods, and it's Hall, not Hal, with no A tacked onto it. Or there. A. There's another common error. Final A added to the names of some Norse goddesses. Idun becomes Iduna, Frigg becomes Frigga, and Hel becomes Hela. All incorrect. Those were not their names. If people want to use an English form rather than saying Valhall, well, that's fine. But then why not remain more correct and say Valhall, as it is in German, incidentally? Now, there is one grammatical form in which Valhall does sound similar to Valhalla, and that is if you're using the preposition to, which was till in Old Norse, so that if you said you wanted to go to a Valhall, well, the O becomes A, and you said till Valhalla, but, well, that's still not Valhalla. You are going to Valhall, not the non-existent Valhalla. I'm quite sure that's not responsible for the oft-repeated error. I doubt very many people would know that to begin with. And, of course, even if they got the name right, the concept of it being the home of the gods, well, that would still be totally wrong. The gods did not live there. The Einherja, or the once fighters, as they were known, those warriors who died bravely in battle, they lived there, fighting by day and feasting by night. Now the gods might have visited Valhall to join in the feasting and the merrymaking, I'm sure they did. And probably they spent quite a lot of time there. Well, even if it was only because they were passed out on the floor from too much mead. But they lived elsewhere in Osgard, many in their own halls. So both the popular name for Valhall and the oft-quoted purpose of it are completely wrong. Yes, most pagans actually get it wrong. Valhalla has become so accepted that this is the term that's used by everybody, Valhalla. And as I say, it's completely incorrect. Another common misconception about Norse religion is that all the gods had precise, specifically designated roles and duties, job descriptions, if you like, as do many of the gods of Olympus or ancient Egypt, of course, that there was a god of this or a goddess of that. as the Greek Bacchus was god of wine, Ares was god of war, Demeter controlled the harvest, along with her daughter Persephone, also the seasons. So when Persephone, trolled off to Hades each year, well, winter came, because without her, well, it couldn't be a summer, because she was the summer, and so on and so forth. No, the Norse pantheon did not have specific tasks assigned to the gods. And, well, while they might have been associated with something or other, it was association. It did not mean that they were the official god of it, that, it could only happen if they allowed it or they caused it to happen. Troia, for example. She enjoyed hearing love songs. She had lovers, and quite a lot of them, including her own brother on one occasion. But anyway, we'll just draw a veil over that one too. She used her favours in bed to obtain her famous necklace when the dwarves refused any other payment, and Odin said that she was very receptive of requests from men, and that lovers should call on her. So, thus she is seen as the goddess of love. But though she was frequently involved with love and has become associated with it, she would, it says she would have looked favourably on those who were in love and given them some assistance where it needed, but that did not make her the goddess of love. She had no specific designated responsibility for it. She wasn't in charge of it. And, well, it happened between people without any direct assistance from her. I mean, she could have trawled off somewhere like Persephone did for a few months. And, people would have just gone on falling in love, having sex and making babies just the same. Nothing would have changed in her absence. So much for her being the goddess of love. Thor, now he was a protector, a guardian, if you like, but he wasn't in charge of thunder and lightning and the weather in general. It wasn't his job to decide if the day was going to be sunny or cloudy, or if rain would fall, or if there'd be lightning and thunder. Nowhere in the sagas or old poems is he mentioned in any way connected with thunder and lightning. Now, maybe his striking his great hammer on a rock, well, that might produce thunder, but it wasn't his job to do that. I mean, he wasn't supposed to go and do it. It can't be thunder, because unless Thor bangs his hammer on something, no thunder. No, it didn't. It didn't work that way. Tyr is often regarded as a god of war. But, well, he did lose his hand to the giant wolf Fenrir. But he wasn't a god devoted to war like the Greek Ares. He just happened to get a rather nasty bite from a very big dog. If any Norse god was to be regarded as a god of war, well, I suppose it would really have to be Odin. Yeah, since it was he who often provoked conflict, and he would decide who would live and who would die, and he would send the Valkyries to make sure those wishes were carried out. And Loki didn't have anything whatsoever to do with fire. No, he was a trickster, but he was not some sort of spirit of flame. He wasn't a divine pyromaniac by a very, very long way. In Loki's case, that seems to have originated in 1835, when Jakob Ludwig Karl Grimm, the elder brother of Wilhelm, known collectively as the Brothers Grimm of fairy tale fame, suggested the idea in his book entitled German Mythology, which traced Teutonic beliefs from the earliest times. And then it got a very big boost from Richard Wagner's operas, Der Ring das Nibelung, the Ring of the Nibelungs, in which he is depicted as a god of fire, with Odin, or Wotan, as he is in the German version, calling him to surround the sleeping Brunhilde with a ring of fire. As I found thee of old, a wandering flame, he says. Yes, well, he didn't. Now, that may have been helped by the word Logi, meaning flame, which is very similar to the name Loki, but actually has no connection with him whatever. In his true Norse form, Loki, well, he couldn't have started a fire in his own hearth without something to light it with. Nor were Thor and Loki brothers, a misconception that is pure Marvel Comics and Thor movies. Oh, my God. Oh, stop mentioning Thor movies. I get such a migraine when I mention those. Anyway, Hel wasn't the goddess of death. No, though she's frequently referred to as such, she's called the death goddess. But rather, she was the goddess of the dead. That isn't quite the same thing. She did not cause death. She had no control over it. She had no say in how or when anybody died. She never killed anyone herself. She was simply charged by Odin to take care of the spirit of people who had died, feeding them and looking after them in the realm that bore her name. Hel, that was all. She had no more to do with death than an undertaker has. They look after people once they are dead, but didn't actually kill any of them. Well, maybe if they were trying to stir up a bit of business, but no, probably not. That was all hell was, and hell was not a half-rotting corpse, nor hunchbacked and deformed, as she so often depicted. There's nothing anywhere in Old Norse literature that gives even the slightest indication of any physical deformity about her. She was not dead. Why would she look like a rotting corpse? Now, those in her realm, they were dead. She was not. And she would not have resembled a rather ripe corpse. But come to think of it, nor indeed would those in her realm have been decaying corpses either, since the Norse hell was very much, well, it was a continuation of what one had done in life. Flowers grew there. It wasn't a place of punishment, as it became later to the Christians, spelt with 2 L's. Actually, really, hell wasn't a goddess. No, she was a Jotun, a giant. Her parents, Loki and Angerboda, were Jotnar, so a divine status for her is rather questionable, really. I think she was really just a giant woman who was given a job, look after all those dead people down there. Now, Idun, yes, Idun could indeed be seen, I suppose, as a goddess of youth, since it was her magic youth-giving apples that kept the gods young, But you see, she wasn't that to mortals. Oh no, she didn't share her lovely apples with the human population of Midgard. So her responsibilities towards youth, well, they stopped at the gates of Åsgard. So in that sense, she was not a goddess of youth. So the concept of every deity of Åsgard being a god or goddess of something, being in charge of it and controlling it as part of their job description, is totally incorrect. Well, there were some who interfered in human affairs more than others, but that was by their own choice. It was not by obligation. It wasn't their job to do it. They just decided to, troll off and butt into human affairs. In part 2, we shall stay up in Åsgard and look at the Valkyria, or the Valkyries in English. Those women, oh so seen as mounted on their horses, gathering dead warriors. Their sole role in Norse mythology is so frequently, well, it's misstated. It concentrates on this one particular thing, focusing on only a part of what they actually did, and a relatively small part of that. So we shall be taking a look at, well, what they really did, what their real tasks were, not what they have become famous for. Just as Vikings have become famous for wearing horned helmets, and the Valkyria have become famous for, well, something they didn't really do all that often. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you will join me in the next one. So for now, I shall say farewell, goodbye for now.